2022, and this is the meeting of the Select Board of the Town of Bolton. First up, we will go into a public hearing pursuant to Chapter 250, Article 5, Section 250-7D, and Article 2, Section 250-21E of the Code of Bolton to act on the application received on November 11th, 2022 from Richard Pelletier of NVW Limited. The applicant seeks to amend the existing agricultural / business use special permit dated September 7th, 1995, and recorded in book 17390, page 168 in the Worcester Registry of Deeds to allow the construction of the following three items. Number one, a 19,200 square foot subterranean storage facility to accommodate wine storage operations. Second, an 800 square foot addition to the winery to accommodate permanent bathrooms. And finally, a 300 square foot addition to the pavilion to accommodate a permanent bathroom. Do I have a motion to go into the public hearing?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Roll call Sikansky,
Aye.
Waisaki.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great. Mr. Pelletier, are you with us this evening?
I believe I am.
Excellent. How are you, Richard?
Not too bad. How you guys doing?
Doing great. Doing great. So
Um,
can you give us a little overview for the benefit of I mean, we know what's going on, but give us a benefit for the audience, please.
Sure. Basically, we have a area of land that is not farmable. It's pretty much in a hollow, and we currently rent space in Clinton to facilitate some of our activities, such as barrel storage and case goods storage. We are being evicted out of there, being replaced by a pot manufacturer. And so we're trying to bring and become more efficient by using land on site and then having the ability to not send our people over, for a 15-minute ride over to Clinton. The building originally was about 19,000 square feet that we proposed. We're somewhere closer to 12,000 square feet. At this time, we reduced it, mostly because of construction costs and inflation. We just don't think we can afford the larger facility at this time. When we proposed that to the Department of Agriculture for Commonwealth of Mass, they had no problem with that, leaving open the possibility of expanding it at a later date. So the current proposed building is actually 120 feet wide by 80 feet long. Has a little stairway to it to get out for a second means of egress. And the building would be topped off with solar panels that we anticipate would supplement our electrical demands by about 60%. With respect to the bathrooms, probably the thing that we get the most critiqued on is our trailer facilities. As nice as they are, there's as nice a bathroom facilities as we could buy. We still get criticized for them, and was hoping to convert those trailers to permanent structures and permanent bathrooms. So I'm coming before you basically today as an ancillary use to our current activities. The buildings are definitely ancillary to our agricultural activities. There is nothing being done that is generating revenue that is a stream of revenue that is not ancillary to agriculture. So I think we fit all of the criteria necessary for the board to see in favor of this proposal.
Okay, great. I would assume that if we vote in favor of amending the agricultural business special permit, that you'll still have to go through all the normal, whatever special permitting, Board of Health and Planning Board and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, I don't think, I'm not sure that the planning board is required, at least not that I know of, but I'll definitely reach out to them.
Sure.
I have had preliminary discussions with the building department. I've reached out a little bit to the fire department, and I've
Mhm.
reached out to the Board of Health. Clearly, all of the questions with respect to septic discharge has to be done by the Board of Health. We currently have two septic systems on site, both are 2,000 gallon per day septic systems. One of the limiting factors that we always face here at Neshoba is that whereas a public water source, we're limited to 2,000 gallons a day. So we will not be able to build facilities that exceed that 2,000 gallons a day public water use. And since we have two septic system each that can handle the 2,000 gallons of water, um, the, the limiting factor is going to be probably determined by the Board of Health more than anything else.
Right, right, okay. Bob, any questions for Mr. Pelican?
No, I reviewed the application. The only question I have is, and I think it answers it, but you don't have any wetlands issues.
No wetlands issues.
Okay.
Okay.
No, I'm fine with it. You know, it looks like a very thorough document. I'm not sure what the whole process is, but it looks like you've covered
Yeah.
things pretty thoroughly.
One question I had, Rich, is I believe you had gotten, well, we had gotten a letter dated November 26, 2022 from Cheryl and Dan Breslin on 116 Wattaquack Hill Road. And I believe we forwarded that to you. Have you replied to the Breslins regarding this?
I have not. I'm happy to reply to them, and I'm also happy to answer the questions right now if anybody wishes.
Okay. Well, I mean, well, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I've reviewed the application. I'm fine with it. You've been before our board to talk about this request to change, and I see no problem with it. So I'm fine with it. Obviously, Mr. Sikansky's fine with it as well. Maybe just for a moment, if there are any questions from the audience, I'll open it up to a few questions if people have any. If you can raise your hand to be recognized if anyone has any questions.
One of the things I can summarize real quick on the questions that were proposed by the Breslins. There's no blasting that's required. All of the material that is excavated on site will be kept on site. It's not being brought off site. We're going to use that to bury the majority of the building on all three sides and make it look even more like a cave than it does in the pictures that we've shown. Erosion will definitely be handled. The runoff and the way water will be handled will be exactly the same as it currently is. Right now, it's mostly surface water coming off of the road. There will be drains, perimeter drains around the buildings, but they will let the building out basically in the same location as they currently flow, so that they flow underneath the culvert between Berlin Road and Wattaquatic Hill Road. And with respect to the restrooms, that's really a matter of Board of Health, but I don't anticipate any increase in water use or any increase in size of septics.
Okay, great. No, thanks very much, Rich. We appreciate the responses. I'm fine. I don't see anyone who's raised their hand.
Someone else did have a question.
All right, can you identify yourself, please?
Yeah, I think it was Mr. Slade.
Mr. Slade,
How are you?
good, thank you. And yourself?
How are you, Rich?
Good, how you doing?
Okay. I do have a bunch of questions, I'm afraid. First, I think you covered this a little bit earlier, but I may not have gotten it all down. Is this for like aging, or is this just warehousing, or what is it? What's it going to be used for?
Primarily aging. Our intention is that it's going to be barrels, wooden barrels. Right now, some of them are over in Clinton.
Okay,
Some of
okay. Do you anticipate trying to use forklifts inside this structure?
Yes.
So what's your ceiling clearance? Because most people with a forklift are looking for 14 feet.
We're looking at 16,
At what?
1/6,
16 feet.
correct.
Okay, I guess, and you said, and the dimensions,
120 by 80. So I don't know if you can see, let me see if I can share my screen. Do I have to get your permission? Host disabled participant screen sharing. So at the entrance of this building, we're basically at an elevation of 17 currently. And at the rear of the building, Wattaquatic Hill Road basically is at about 35. So you can see just from where the front of the building is to Wattaquatic Hill Road is is actually 18 feet change in elevation. So that's kind of why it works and why it's not going to be sticking up out of the ground like I guess that's what you're imagining is a building coming out of the ground and maybe looking a little bit like a chicken coop.
well, or an Amazon warehouse. What is the front facade of the building? What do you propose to look like? I believe your application showed one opening into the facade.
Yeah, so 3 sides will be buried. There'll probably be a maximum of 2 to 3 feet of the building sticking above, and then solar panels, probably about a 16-inch slant. So, and then one side of the building, which would be facing easterly, I don't know if you can imagine, would
Yep.
would have a opening and a man door, truck backing up to it. And both of the sides of the man door and the garage door, for lack of a better word, would have kind of wing walls out there so that we could also bury the majority of the front of the building. So I would estimate that at least 90% of the building will be basement area.
This is kind of particular, but I'm just, I guess I do have the fear of, 6 overhead doors facing me. You're anticipating one door, and what is it going to be? 16 foot, 12 foot?
I would probably be, my guess would be, it'd be something like 12 feet by, 12 feet.
Yeah, got it. The access to the building is going to be off Berlin Road,
Correct.
and will that be sort of in the location?
Oh yeah. No, we probably right now over to Clinton, we probably make one trip a day, probably 3 a week.
I'm sorry, something happened. I think we sort of walked on each other here, Rich.
Can you hear me?
I can now. I think you were
Okay.
saying that somebody had asked something about the level of traffic, or you had offered something?
Yeah, we currently travel over to Clinton 1 time a day, probably 3 times a week. And it's our box truck, which is a 24-foot box truck.
Okay. Well, it's not really it's not my area of particular expertise. I am a little concerned that I think the traffic at that intersection is going to be is troubling on a good day without your driveway there. But I think that's more up to the highway department and the public safety people. You had mentioned drainage. I'm a little concerned that being on the downhill side here, I'm not overjoyed by the thought of additional water being directed towards the culvert underneath the the junction of Berlin and Wattaquatic. And currently it actually sort of flows out into the field. There's very little water from there that's coming down into that culvert. It's all going, it all sheet flows across the field, and then frankly makes a big mess down at Nash's that I don't want to get into right now. You know, I guess, do you think that you're going to be trying to shovel it all down into the corner where the Wattaquatic and Berlin Road is, down that low spot?
Well, I think that's where it goes already. I don't think that the highway department has actually done us a little bit of a favor in that area. It used to be a lot wetter than it currently is. We couldn't even drive tractors down there in the spring in the area where we were going to build the building or propose to build the building. They have now redirected that so that it does in fact flow down into that area, that wedge area where Berlin Road meets Wattaquatic. Usually when I'm spraying down there, I would say almost the entire year, there's a dampness in front of that culvert. If you look at the topography, the runoff from Wattaquatic Hill Road and from the area that we're proposing the building, I don't think flows at all towards the easterly part of Berlin Road or towards Nash's house at all. I mean, I granted that is a wet area. Wattaquatic Hill Road is our entire land is wet. I mean, that's one of the benefits that we have, is the fact that we don't have to irrigate because we have the entire hill of Wattaquatic Hill Road rolling down onto Wattaquatic Hill Road, and then it comes across onto our property. So that's not going to change. We're just basically to make sure that it doesn't infiltrate our building and then proceeds along the side of our building and releases the same place it would end up anyway. It can't go directly to Berlin Road because we have what our St. Croix crop planted there, which is actually going to be about roof height.
Your what crop?
The St. Croix, those are the grapes,
Oh, yeah. Fine.
basically right at the intersection of Wattaquatic and Berlin Road. And down in that, at the end of those is where that culvert is, and that is damp almost 365 days a year.
Well, the problem is that ends up in my field, and frankly, the highway department may have done you a service by improving that culvert. They didn't do me any favors.
Yeah, I think a lot changed down there too when they built that bridge, and there's a lot quicker flow now, I think, from across on the Stevenson land, and
I do think it would be worthwhile. I don't know whether the rest of the board has feelings on this. I appreciate that you've ended up revising the building size down. That sort of, I didn't expect that, but that's fine. Do you think it would be possible for you to go out there and put like 4 surveying stakes with maybe, you use a lot of different colored tapes in that orchard. Maybe if you could just find some yellow tape or even old leftover caution tape that you can buy at Lowe's, just yellow tape, put it on 4 high surveying stakes and locate where you think the 4 corners of this place is going to be in the real land.
I'm sure. Yeah, that's relatively
I would think that
easy.
would be useful to the board, and I would actually think they might like to look at that.
Well, have you seen, Mark, have you seen the aerial drawing that we had drawn up?
I looked at your application, and to tell you the truth, I didn't have a chance to go over it as carefully as I'd like. I thought there was some real scaling, probably, to tell you the truth, Rich, and I don't want to get into an argument with you.
Yeah, this is the size of the old building. Can you scroll to the most current rendering? I think it's before, if that's one of the pages. It would be before that, I believe.
think that's the only aerial that we have.
Is it possible to share my screen?
Yes, you should be able to share now. Let me just stop my share.
Mark, I think at this point, what we're attempting to do is to take a vote as to allow the modification of the special permit that Rich has, an agricultural permit. There's going to be plenty of opportunity in the normal course of the process that Rich then will have to go through to get this constructed. And there's been information provided, and if you need some additional time to look at that, I think that's fine. But now is not the time to micromanage and make determinations as to what should be done or not done. That should be done during the special process and permitting process and the review by the boards and committees that need to go through this to actually approve this. I think for tonight, the purpose is to vote to recommend to amend the special permit to allow this to happen. And then that the other processes need to go through. And if Rich is successful, he'll get his building. And if he's not successful, he won't get his building.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts, Chairman, but with all due respects, I'm not sure that there's a whole hell of a lot more he has to do other than getting his special permit modified tonight. I don't see site plan approval kicking in on this, do you?
I'm not the expert here, but he has to go through a number of processes, including the Board of Health. It's not a slam dunk that we amend this special permit and he can start construction tomorrow. That's not going to work this way.
Rich, I think this is one pertinent question that still exists, and that is, are you planning on having any wastewater producing facilities in this building, or is it just a warehouse? If it's just a warehouse, it doesn't need a toilet.
I'm sorry, am I planning? It's primarily just a warehouse storage of oak barrels and stuff like that. I will say that there would probably be a drain inside for cleanup and perhaps a tight tank, but that the discharge of water from this facility is going to be, 1,000 gallons a year maximum. I mean, I just know that when we move cases of wine around with a forklift, we tend to break them, and it's a little bit easier to clean up if we can take a hose and wash the floor down than to mop it up.
Okay. Well, I don't want to get in an argument with the chairman. If he feels he has what he needs, then that I'm micromanaging, I'll relinquish for now.
All right, well, thank you very much. If there are no other questions, and I don't see anyone's
Chairman, I
hand.
just want to remind you to close the hearing before you take your vote.
Yep, no. Seeing that no other questions, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing. Oh, wait, we have someone raising their hand. Mr. Allen?
Yes, apologize. Sorry for the late hand raise. I'm new to the whole process. I own the 122 Watt Aquatic, about 10 acres on the uphill side of the winery. I was hoping, I know the subterranean storage facility is probably the biggest part of this, but I was actually hoping to get a little more direction on the additions for the bathrooms. I'm not too familiar with the winery property. I didn't know if that could be more clearly pointed out, where those are going in, and are they bigger than the current trailer facilities currently? Could any information be provided on those?
Sure. I'm just trying to bring up. Can you see the screen now?
Not yet.
Let's see. Um, I'm sharing my screen. Can you see the land overlay now?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So currently, this is the wedding pavilion over here. And the bathroom facility is right here is a trailer with a little shed roof that goes into, and it would be pretty much in this same area here, slightly bigger, but the same number of stalls and everything. And our hope would be that we'd be able to pump it from here up to the septic system serving the restaurant, and the field is over here. With respect to the winery itself, the trailers are right here. There's two of them, one here that consists of a male stall and 3 urinals, as well as 3 female stalls. And then this one here has 5 female stalls. So those are basically already tied into the septic system. It comes down to right here is where the field is. So it would be basically building off of the winery, a building to replace these 2 trailers here, and using the same pipeline and tank to go down to the leach field down here. So from a non-visitor standpoint, I don't think you'll even see or notice any difference at all. From a visitor standpoint, it'll clearly be an upscale to our current facilities.
So what you're saying, Rich, is it's primarily replacing trailers with a permanent structure.
Yep.
Okay, so it's not necessarily that you're asking for more, it's just you're asking to replace trailers which are not necessarily permanent with a permanent structure
Right.
to facilitate exactly what you have now.
Yeah, they would be a little bit bigger. They would be a little bit bigger to make them
Okay.
roomier. We do get complaints that the stalls in a trailer are crowded. And then the other thing is that currently none of those stalls have any handicap facilities. So we have 1 handicap bathroom in the winery itself. This would end up making it so that we ended up having at least 3 handicap facilities.
Okay, so at a high
That's
level,
a way to
it's
clarify.
not more, it's just replacing.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was helpful.
If there are no other questions, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
So
A
moved.
point of clarification on that last statement, please. It was my understanding, Rich, that the units in the trailers up by the winery were going into a tight tank that Lakeside pumps out, I think, every Friday morning.
That's actually for the winery production water.
Okay, so all of the sanitary water has been going into the existing system because it didn't function very well a while ago. And you and I talked about that maybe 20, 30 years ago.
Correct.
Um,
So that's when we installed the tight tank, Mark. What was happening when Jack owned the property is he was flushing all of the pumice, and especially cranberries, down that system, and plugging it up. The acidity from the fruit byproducts was just killing the bacteria necessary for that system to function properly. We didn't use it for a number of years. We had it tested. It works fine now, and there hasn't been any problem with it. We do have some problems with the trailer every so often because the trailers have such low flush toilets that sometimes, if we're not on top of it, paper builds up in the tanks on the toilet. And then we have those also pumped out by the pump company, but they're there every Friday, primarily pumping a tight tank that is all the floor and drain discharges from the production facility of the winery.
Okay, all right. I'm impressed that that system survives, to tell you the truth, because it was pretty sick when Jack had it, but.
Yep, we had it all cleaned out, hound out. They, whatchamacallit, did that also. And that was like you said, probably,
Almost 30 years ago.
yeah.
No, it was, I don't know, sometime in the early 90s.
Yep.
All right, well, again, I'm trying to respect the chairman's request for me not to micromanage this right now. So I guess I'm going to close my books for now.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Slade. I will now take a motion to close the public hearing.
I move to close the hearing.
I'll second that. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay,
Roll call, Sikansky,
Aye.
Waisaki.
aye.
Thank you.
All right, do I have a motion to amend the existing agricultural business use special permit dated September 7th, 1995?
Yes, I move to, what's the new number? Is it 1,200 that you're gonna put in? 12,000?
Yeah.
12,200 or just 12,000?
I believe it's 12,200 with that stairway in the
Okay.
back.
So I move to amend the special use permit dated September 7th, 1995 to permit a 12,200 square foot subterranean storage facility to accommodate winery storage operations, a separate 800 square foot addition to the winery to accommodate permanent bathrooms, and a 300 square foot addition to the pavilion to accommodate permanent bathroom.
I will second that. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Roll call, Sikansky,
Aye.
Waisaki.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard.
All righty, guys. Have a good day. Thank you very much.
You
Good
as
luck,
well.
Rich.
Have a good holiday if we don't talk to you.
All righty,
care
you
now.
too.
All right, next up is the introduction of Officer Don Calderon to the board by Police Chief Nelson. Chief Nelson, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Stan, for allowing us the opportunity to be in front of the board tonight. Back January 2019, Don was actually appointed by you guys as a reserve officer. And for the past 3+ going on to almost 4 years, he's been doing a great job with us. And with the new police reform, Don had to go to the Bridge Academy, which is the equivalent of a full-time academy with his previous training of reserve and SSPO, which is the Special State Police Officer training. And he's gotten the equivalent of a full-time academy. So that made him qualified for this open position of a full-time patrol officer. So same thing, Don's, he lives close by, just up the road in Chelmsford. He's married, and he's been doing a great job. And actually tonight is his first shift, and he's sitting in the cruiser somewhere.
Well, great. Well, welcome, Don. It's a
Thank
pleasure
you.
to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure to meet you.
So, yeah, Don is out there earning his money tonight, and he's Don. I just want to echo what the chief said. He's done a great job for us. The time he's been here, when I reviewed the packet with the chief, I was delighted to be able to get somebody of Don's caliber on full time, and I just want to say, welcome aboard to your permanent position here.
Thank you. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Great. No, that's super.
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to
meeting
meet
you
you. And thanks for your work so far. So I'll send you a list of what my cars look like and my license plates.
Oh,
I'll look
Stan,
forward to it.
they already have that, Stan. Don't worry.
Oh, they do. They do. Yeah. Well, you need to take my picture down from the post office too.
Yeah. They've got the front and side profiled.
That's right. Like,
Yes. Have you seen this man?
well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure. We'll let you get back to work.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank
right,
you,
thank you,
Chief. Appreciate it. All right, bye-bye now. All right, next up is a request from the Conservation Commission to place new signs at trailheads for conservation lands in town. Conservation agent Rebecca, I don't want to mess this one up. I know you as Longval, so you'll have to give me the correct pronunciation now.
It's Buchaya. So we've been
Buchaya.
Buchaya, yes. I've been telling people because we were married in October, so Halloween, boo, chai, as in chai tea, and that's the easiest way to remember it. Well, I think Stan.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So this evening, the request is,
Well,
so
great.
these sign,
Well-
well, Stan's back. Go ahead.
No, it's a pleasure. I know I'm fading in and out like I normally do, so that's all right.
So thank you for having us this evening, or having me this evening. This is in regards to our typical trail signs that we use, but realizing that even though we put up signs inside of properties, along trails at intersections, the signs along the roadway may fall under your purview. So we just want to make sure that we're approaching this the correct way. And one of our other signs were flagged by another staff to prompt this discussion. So that's why I'm here this evening.
Yep.
So in your packets, you saw essentially the 2 different sign types.
Mhm.
So it's 4 signs total that we're requesting this evening, 3 of which are our typical 8.5 by 11 maps, which are contained in a wooden frame with some plastic over it to be general, and then on a 4x4 post. And that's again visible from the roadway so people can see the trailhead. That will be at Goose Pond Path, which is also adjacent to the Wilder Conservation Area. One will be installed at the Rocky Dundee cul-de-sac, where we have a section of conservation property along that right-of-way. And then at Coventry Wood, that is more related to a Bolton Conservation Trust property that will soon be reviewed for a trail. Then the last sign is another project that is partially completed at this time, but it is over by the Oaks, and then a future trail that the trust is working on as well across over on the old Perham land as well, and the international conservation restriction. So that will be a 4-foot by 4-foot sign. And that is similar to our larger brown property signs that you see around town.
Yep. No, I'm fine with all the signs and the requests, so I'm.
Yeah,
I'm
looks good to me.
Yep. Yep.
Do we need a motion on this or just consensus?
I would seek a motion just to formalize it.
All right, I move to approve the installation of signs at Goose Pond Path, Rocky Dundee, Coventry Wood, and Ballville the Oaks.
I will second that. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Roll call Sikansky,
Aye.
and Waisaki.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca.
Wonderful, thank you. And just a very short question. Is this how you would like us to proceed in the future? If we have any new trailhead signs or new properties that need trailhead signs, or would you prefer there be a different method to approach that?
No, this is fine. This is great.
Okay, great,
Yeah, I think
thank
if
you.
if it's in the town right away, for the sake of consistency, you need to do this.
Yep, wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. All right, great. Well,
Thank you, Rebecca.
next up is an updated discussion with the Historical Commission.
Okay. Do
Okay.
you want me to lead this?
Sure.
Good evening.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. We've been talking to all the committees that are appointed by the select board this past fall. What I'd like to do is start with you telling us what the Historical Commission does and what plans what you've recently accomplished and what you're going to be accomplishing in the next year.
Okay, well, with your permission, what I'd like to do is if I could put up some slides that I think will answer your questions, and if not, it may be a good springboard for whatever you'd like to know. Would that be acceptable?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay, and can I screen share here?
Yes, you should be able to.
Okay. I'll switch my screen here. Let me start the slideshow. Okay, can you all see the slide?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. This is just a quick photo montage of many of the things we've touched over the years. The thing I'd like to point out most significantly is the picture in the lower left, which you'll see coming up later on. This was the Keys House on Hudson Road. That was one of our major preservation successes in the recent years. I guess I'd first like to introduce ourselves, who we all are, because I'm not sure that all of us are familiar to everyone. Myself, I'm the chairman, Bob Bush, as of July of this year. My background is I'm a retired defense industry program manager. I've lived in Bolton for 43 years, and I've spent 9 years on historical commission. Martha Remington is our chairman emeritus, who's a retired software developer, also a 43-year, by coincidence, Bolton resident with 22 years and on the HC and 19 as chairman. And I'd like to take a second to just thank Martha for all of the years she has put into this. I don't think there's anyone else alive who both knows the history of Bolton as well as Martha and has put as much time and effort into preserving it as she has. And we're delighted that she's agreed to stay on so that we have the benefit of her substantial institutional knowledge going forward. Our other members are Alice Cockashall, who's a retired administrative assistant, a very long time, 45-year Bolton resident, 16 years on the commission. Jean Marie Padovano is our secretary. She's recently volunteered for that position to help us get our minutes under control. She's a teacher at FSS, 13-year Bolton resident, 8 years on the commission. Rob Tattersall is an engineer, a longtime resident, 25 years, but relatively new to the commission. And finally, Nathaniel Smith, who's a professional municipal archivist and records manager who's been on for a short period of time, but has been very helpful in terms of bringing us up to speed in terms of modern technologies and doing things well. This is actually the most members that we've had on the commission, I think, that I can recall. Usually it's a smaller number than 6. Okay, so what do? We meet every month for a regular meeting, and we have fairly frequent special meetings and public hearings. Our primary role is to administer the demolition delay bylaw, which involves research, on-site inspection, photography, meetings, hearings, discussions, and negotiations with applicants. We're the interface for the town with the Mass Historical Commission, and we maintain the inventory of historic properties. We've sponsored National Register historic districts. We have 2 so far, Main Street and Pan, and the 3rd one on East End is in process. I'll talk a little bit more about that on a subsequent slide. We respond to fairly frequent resident inquiries about historic properties. We help with getting market plaques for buildings. We provide advice on building preservation. We've erected markers and plaques, memorializing various aspects of Bolton history, including historic districts signage. We've even done some hands-on work where we periodically, maybe every year or so, we'll take a morning and go off and do some work like resetting headstones in the cemetery or painting bollards or removing brush at some places. And you can see a couple of our folks, Alice and Martha, at the Hillside Church, which is completely obscured, and a couple of years back we cleared that away. And then finally we participate in the master plan activity. I should talk about the demolition delay bylaw, since that's a very important part of our purpose. And that is that it only applies to buildings that are greater than 75 years old. And as an aside, I would comment that if our historical commission were buildings, 3 of us would fall in this category. So the process is that we evaluate a building for historical significance, and it's well defined in the bylaw what that means. If it's not deemed significant, then we allow immediate demolition. And frankly, many of the permits that come before us are so dispositioned. If it's a significant building, we will hold a fully noticed public hearing to determine if the building should be saved. The purpose of the public hearing is to garner public input on whether or not that should be the case. If it is, then we can impose a 6-month delay And the purpose of that is to provide the cooling off period so we can explore preservation options with the owner. If the time expires and there is no, if there's no agreement reached, then they can go ahead and demolish it as needed. The two that I'd like to specifically mention were, one is the 1728 Keys Bonazzoli house, which you can see at the lower right, and you see actually a couple of members of the Bonazzoli family sitting in front of it. This was the same picture that I pointed out on the first page. We were able to negotiate an agreement with the developer with the help of the planning board to get that house preserved and turned into 2 units of affordable housing. And as an aside, we were also the group that helped name the road Moderator Way, since Keys was the first moderator of the town of Bolton. And just recently, as of Monday, we had an additional hearing on a property on 22 West Berlin Road, which is the one up at the top, which was recently changed hands. And the owner is currently exploring his options as to whether or not he can preserve the house and large barn at the front of that property, or whether that needs to be torn down. So we're currently starting dialogue with him on that process. Any questions about the demolition delay bylaw? Okay.
Not at
One
this
thing that we
time.
don't do.
Something I will want to come back to. I don't want to interrupt your presentation.
Okay, that's fine. Whatever works for you is fine. One thm we don't do, and this is, I think, is somewhat confusing for many folks, is that we don't administer any historic districts. And when many people hear the term historic district, they think of the typical local historic district where they restrict paint color and require approvals of repairs and all that stuff. We don't have any local historic districts, so that simply doesn't apply in Bolton. We do, however, have 2 national historic districts, but those districts don't impose any burden on the property owners. So there's no administration process, simply because there's nothing to do. So any questions on historic districts?
Yep.
Okay.
At the moment.
One other thing I wanted to mention is that there's the Historical Commission and the Society are often confused. We, the Historical Commission, are a town government body. We're appointed by you folks, and it's our job to serve at the pleasure of the town. The Historical Society is a completely independent 501c3, and they do their own thing. We have some members that are in common, but basically our organizations are entirely independent. And I'll note that there are towns where this is not the case, and specifically in Berlin, their historical society is, for practical purposes, a subsidiary of the Historical Commission. That's definitely not the case in Bolton. New initiatives. This, I'm sure, will be of interest. Is that earlier this week, actually, we brought in a timber frame expert to take a quick second look at the old fire station, to compare it to basically to validate from another point of view the DPW's consultant assessment, and concluded the same, that the building is in pretty tough shape and not practically restorable. But this actually turned out to be a useful interaction and another reason is that when I was talking to Randy, I think there may be some opportunities for us, the Historical Commission, to help identify potential grants and funding that may be able to help with restoration projects on some town-owned buildings. The critical thing that Randy would have to do is help us identify the projects and make sure that we had matching funds that we would typically need for a grant. And then we may be able to find some outside money to help. And it has been done in the past before my tenure, I know this was done for some funding for the town hall slate roof repair way back when. And I think there are more opportunities. There's certainly lots of grants out there, and we need to get on the bandwagon to get some. And that's it. So you can ask large, medium, or small questions, whatever you'd like.
Yeah, I'd like to, well, first off, I'd like to thank you for pointing out the distinction between the Historical Commission and the Historical Society.
Yep.
Because that was something I wanted to bring up to make sure people understood the distinction here, where the Historical Commission is a part of town government and the Historical Society is not. It's an independent outside group. But I'd like to go back to the historic districts for a minute. You
Yep.
have one in process now.
Yep.
And that would be the third one. How much have you
Correct.
spent on that thus far?
It's a fixed fee of 10K. And we're in, I believe, either 8 or 9.
Okay. And what part of the process are you in?
We are currently in the process of going through the vetting with the Mass Historical Commission. That's a fairly iterative process where we provide inputs and then we have to reshape them to meet their needs. And they have lots of different constraints that are very much people dependent. So one of the lessons we've learned is that, and we're using the same consultant who's very familiar with the process, but the people that were involved in the last historic district, as well as the one before that, are different. And the criteria and the way of applying the criteria is slightly different. So there's more interactive work involved in getting it reshaped and meeting their concerns.
All right. And why have you not consulted with the select board on this application?
That's a good question. I guess the short answer is we weren't really aware that we necessarily need to do that. We certainly made this apparent when we were in the budget review process. It was not a secret. I wasn't aware that we needed to specifically ask for permission. I don't believe that was done for the previous ones. I don't know if Martha's on the line and can help me with that. I don't specifically recall that as being a concern.
Well, if you could return the screen to screen sharing to Jenny.
Yep.
Jenny, I'd like you to put up that information about the Massachusetts General Law governing historical commissions.
Yeah, let me exit my screen share here. Hang on. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing. Okay.
So that's the annual town meeting that approved the creation of the Historical Commission. And I'm going to ask Jenny to scroll down to the highlighted section. Okay, for the purpose of protecting and preserving such places as may make recommendations as it deems necessary to the city council or the selectmen, and subject to the approval of the city council or the selectmen to the Massachusetts Historical Commission, that any such place be certified as an historical or archaeological landmark. The way I read that is this is a requirement before you submit to the Massachusetts Historical Commission. Is there another explanation for this?
Well, first of all, what's the context? What is the context we're reading here? This is new to me. So
yeah, I'm sorry. You are reading. This is Chapter 40, Section 8D of the Massachusetts General Law. And Jenny, if you could scroll back to the bottom of the prior page, just because I like to make everything nice and tidy here. Again, this is a copy of the warrant approving the creation of the Historical Commission to accept the provisions of Chapter 40, Section 8D, which is what I showed you a moment ago.
Okay.
Now, has the Historical Commission ever brought anything to the Select Board for approval before submitting it to the Massachusetts Historical Commission? Let me step back one more time. My understanding is to get something in the registry, the National Registry of Historic Places, they depend upon the state historical commissions to do the vetting for them. So you can't submit directly to the federal, you have to submit to the state and they in turn approve it, at which point the federal registry accepts it.
It's not quite that simple. They each apply their own vetting criteria, and the Massachusetts vetting process is very much geared towards the federal vetting process. They basically work together,
Okay,
but they're separate processes. Each one will vet on their own criteria. But since the Mass Historical Commission is familiar with that, they do a large portion of the vetting in a way they know will be accepted downstream.
okay. Well, it appears to me that all of these things should have gone through the select board or the Board of Selectmen, whichever it was at the time.
Okay, I personally was not aware of this. I can tell you that we followed the same procedure to the best of my knowledge and belief that was done for the previous two historic districts. So whatever sin of omission was committed, it's not the first time.
I'm not gonna argue about that. Nope.
So,
Um,
and I'm not sure what, where are you taking us with this suggestion? Are you suggesting we should stop, or what are you recommending?
Well, let me go on. You're not aware of this. Let's talk about historical districts in your slide that you have no jurisdiction on over them. Your website, the Historical Commission website, has a section that says mandate. And the final sentence on the mandate is, it is the local commission's mandate to be the local municipal watchdog for state and federal preservation agencies, alerting them to local preservation issues. And on the first page of your webpage, it says, the Bolton Historical Commission is a local representative for the Massachusetts Historical Commission. The commission's goal, as charged by the state, is the preservation of Bolton's historical places.
I said that on one of my early slides.
Yeah, but
That's true. That's accurate.
okay. Is the Massachusetts Historical Commission paying for any of this creation of the third district?
No.
No.
Other than the labor that they expend in reviewing applications and such, they don't directly pay any town for this, because it's most towns treat this as an honorarium that has added value to the town.
Okay. Well, but you do have jurisdiction over these districts. If you don't like something that's happening in these districts and there's state or federal money involved, you can bring in the state or federal agencies to address what your concerns are.
That's true.
Okay, so to say you have no jurisdiction at all really isn't correct. Could we go to the map?
Can I just clarify what I'm
of the three districts in town, Jenny?
Can I just make a comment, just semantic clarification? When I use the term the terms that I used, I was focused on trying to explain that, again, there's a lot of concern about overregulation of homeowners. And we don't micromanage homeowners in terms of what they do, nor does being in a national registered district cause that micromanagement to occur. It's strictly an honorary benefit, actually, because it actually opens up some opportunities for homeowners for preferential funding and the like.
Okay.
So it's a beneficial thing if it exists.
Here's the three.
So now what are we looking at here?
Here's the three historical districts. They're not truly circular. There's just circles to highlight the areas in there. This is what, 2/3, somewhere between a half and 2/3 of Main Street are in historical districts.
That's probably about right.
And so the Historical Society, not on the individual homes, but on any work done using any state money. We get very little money from the state except for Chapter 90 money. You now have some kind of veto power over that, which nobody talked about when you were submitting these to the Massachusetts Historical Commission. Your decision to move ahead and put this in districts was not voted on by the town nor reviewed by any of the town's elected officials. And yet we're now under the Massachusetts Historical Commission if in case we want to do something with our Chapter 90 money. And we've got to please the Historical Commission at the same time.
I'm not sure.
I don't think that was the correct way to go about doing this.
I guess I'm confused. Is this something we're talking about as hypothetical or actual? I mean, I'm not aware of any circumstance where the Historical Commission has caused money to be lost or some downside benefit like that to the town. Is there some case that I'm not aware of?
I don't have any specific examples at the moment, but my point is you've put yourself in a position to have that kind of authority without consulting anybody.
I
Then
think what
I'd like
Mr.
to go on to
Sikansky is,
I'd like to go on to the scenic road bylaw. You have a copy of the scenic road bylaw on your website. And reviewing your minutes, if I look at October 2020, the Bolton Historical Commission wants the DPW to notify them if it's working on historic culverts and stone walls. And at the same time, there was a private residence, 305 Wattaquatic Hill Road, that had a stone wall removed or raised or damaged or something. And the Bolton Historical Commission took it upon themselves to address it. I don't see anything in the scenic road bylaw, which is what governs stone walls, that gives the Historical Commission any authority to address stone wall issues. So I'd like to know where you think the authority to do that comes from.
Well, we don't have, the Historical Commission doesn't have the authority to regulate any of this. But what we can do is basically provide inputs to keep an eye on, basically to watch for things that shouldn't be happening, or at least make people aware of it.
If
we're not a regulatory, we don't issue building permits. That's not our never has been our purview.
But it's within the purview of the Historical Commission to go up to private citizens about issues that are purely in the planning board's province.
I don't recall any time when that's happened, actually. I mean, we do keep, people, we live in the town, we do keep our eyes out for things that are happening. And we'll often, if we see something happening, use that as a reason to go pay attention to a particular hearing.
Here's a copy
to see what's going on. For example, if there's a
Scroll down a
tree
little
being
bit.
removed, to provide another set of eyes or another set of public inputs.
All right, right here. It's in your minutes. You went to the homeowner at 305 Wattaquatic Hill Road. And you don't have the authority to do that. I don't even know why Century Mill is on here. There's nothing about the Century Mill development that's of any concern to the Historical Commission's authority, to its jurisdiction.
What is it you would like us to do?
I'd like you to recognize the laws and follow them instead of just sticking your fingers into everybody else's business.
Oh, boy.
Bob, if I might.
I guess I'm looking for a little direction here. I mean, this was not at all the meeting I was expecting. So clearly I was not well prepared for this meeting.
Well, it's certainly, this is not what if I interject, Mr. Bush, this is not necessarily direction I was looking to take either, but Mr. Sikansky has a point. there have been numerous instances where, and going by what Mass General Law says, where there needs to be some review by the governing body of the select board. That has not taken place in a number of instances. And perhaps we might want to look at formalizing that based upon Mass General Law. And I think Bob also has a point where the Historical Commission might have gone beyond its jurisdiction in a couple of cases. So I think, in a lot of these cases, we're talking about homeowners. We're talking about, you brought up the demolition delay bylaw, where homeowners or prospective homeowners may be financially impacted. And I know of one many years ago that was tremendously financially impacted by the demolition delay bylaw. And the home was at the end of the day, the home had to go because of what couldn't be saved. And that individual and that family suffered tremendous delays and financial hardship because of this. I think maybe we need to have looking at perhaps a little bit closer to what Mass General Law has to say, and maybe have a second pair of eyes on some of this stuff, and make sure that the due diligence is done properly, and maybe that there's if lack of a better term, a second opinion, which I think is what Mr. Sikansky is discussing with you. So I mean, Mr. Sikansky has his input, and obviously we have not discussed this, so this is all new information to me tonight. But I think we do need to perhaps take a look at some of this and maybe reset some expectations.
Well, I mean, we'll be happy to do less. Believe me, there's all of us have other lives. We have other things to do. And if the issue is that we're doing more than you'd like us to do, we'll be more than happy to not do it. Okay. Generally, what our philosophy collectively has been is we try to be stewards for this town. Our objective is to keep an eye on things to the best we can. If we see something that looks untoward, to see what we can do about it. We're not trying to stand in anybody's way. We're not trying to block the path of progress, but we're trying to be helpful. For example, the house on Hudson Road, the Keys farmhouse, which was again built by the first moderator of the town, would very likely be gone right now if we didn't put in the effort to make that happen. Okay, we got a lot of help from the planning board for sure. They did some great things in terms of the way they structured the development plan. But I can tell you personally, it took a lot of effort to make that happen. Now, if your message to us is you want to stick by the letter of the law, you want to give us a charter, stick to it, and don't dare step beyond it, we're more than happy to do that. But you got to tell us exactly, and we'll be happy to scale back our activities. If you don't want us watching out for things, construction work that's going on in town, and just ignore it, we can do that. Again, we can reduce our scope gladly. But I didn't think that was, I personally, and I know Martha would agree with me, is we felt that what we were trying to do was for the benefit of the town, not personal benefit. And we're certainly not looking to make anybody's life more difficult. And if that's the way you perceive us, then I would strongly recommend that you basically give us a charter, say, do this and not more, and we'll be happy to do that.
Well, I'll let Bob Sikansky chime in a second, but I don't think that we're asking you to do less. I think and Bob, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is I think what Mr. Sikansky is asking for is a bit more inclusion in the process, and not necessarily going off by yourself where you may not necessarily have the jurisdiction. The things that you find are great, and if you see something where some attention needs to be applied, but perhaps some additional inclusion with the select board might be of benefit. And I'll stop here and let Mr. Sikansky chime in.
Well, let me comment on that. We agree with that. I agree exactly with what you said, and we have on numerous occasions, I believe, come before the board We haven't, however, looked to the board to micromanage us. We try to act as independently where it seems appropriate. If we step beyond that, then we try to go to the board. Now, have we missed that? For sure. For example, when some district signs were put up without the select board's permission, shame on us. That was a mistake. Should not have done that. We should have gone before it. Lesson learned, would not do that again. Okay, but it wasn't in any attempt to circumvent the board. It was simply to try to expedite the process, that's all. But we now know that in that particular area that we shouldn't do that. And we're happy to do that. We're happy to follow the direction we've been given.
How long ago was it that you got the grants for the slate room roof came in?
I'm sorry, speak. Oh, I don't know. It was more than 10 years ago.
Okay.
I don't know anything about the details other
Okay.
than the fact that it happened.
So there haven't been any grants received in 10 years. Okay, I don't know why you're casting these big wide nets to take care of everybody's stone walls and oversee the management of all the culverts. And, you know, I'll be happy to go on to the demolition delay bylaw, because I think you're overstepping your charter there too. But you're doing all of that stuff instead of focusing on the historic preservation. Have you read the document prepared for the town on the condition of all the town's buildings?
No, I'm trying to get a copy of it. I talked to Randy about it the other day and it's not posted yet. He was going to post it for me so I could see it. I have seen it, but it wasn't widely disseminated. Just as before the meeting about the old fire station, we didn't receive a copy of the assessment report. I received that after the fact.
It's not the job of the town administrator and the DPW to tell the volunteer chair people what their job is. Okay?
I
If they've
agree
got
100%.
information, they will share it with you.
But you're asking me if I've seen the information. The answer is no.
Okay. Have you seen the report on the Emerson School put together by the Neshoba Regional School District in 2018?
No.
Okay, so there's a couple core things, some of them several years old, that the historical commission's not dealing with, but they're involved in culverts, they're involved in stone walls.
Did anyone send it to the historical
You're
commission?
far afield from what you should be doing. You're far afield. from
Did
what you
anyone
should
share
be
those
doing.
reports that you're referring to with the historical commission? I've
Pardon
never
me?
seen it. Did anyone bother to share it with the historical commission? We're not mind readers. I can tell you that. We have many skills, but we're not mind readers.
I don't know. These are public documents.
Okay, well, there's a lot of public documents, but I don't know about you, but I don't have the time to chase all the public documents on the planet. I need somebody to give me a document if they think it's worth something I should be paying attention to, who has access to it. I would certainly do that. I wouldn't expect them to figure it out.
Have you asked for any information on the condition of buildings?
No, because again, our charter is not the maintenance of buildings. That's not what we
No,
do.
but-
We obviously are taking an interest in this, in the fire station. We've had an interest in it. We've taken a greater interest in it, given understanding now what its condition is. We did not know that before. So,
Okay.
it's not our job to inspect the buildings, but in this particular case, we said, yeah, we should probably do that as
No,
a
but if you
second
knew the
opinion.
condition of the buildings, then you'd have some grants to apply for. So, but by choosing to not get involved in any of that stuff, you've got no reason to apply for grants.
Well, the problem with grants is most grants require matching funds. Okay, we don't have the funds or the budget to do that. Now, the reason that I brought it up, and I thought it was a helpful thing, and I'm a little bit annoyed, frankly, that I'm being chastised, is that by talking to Randy, we came up with a way that potentially could take advantage of the fact that he has budget or can get budget to do certain work on some of these buildings. And if we can collaborate and figure out projects that are amenable to a grant where there would be matching funds available from the town that would otherwise be spent on maintenance, now we have something we can do. Getting grants that have no strings attached is extremely difficult. And we're not magicians. Okay, we need a way to do it. And a way to do that is to integrate it with what the work the DPW is doing. And that's what I was suggesting. And I thought it was a good thing. And the expectation that somehow we should be chastised for not finding grants, I'm not going to take that, to be frank with you. That's not a possibility. We already just told us we've overstepped our scope. And now you're suggesting that we underperform because we haven't been bringing in grants. I can't have it both ways. We can go back to close our doors, focus on the demolition delay bylaw, and that's it. That's one possibility. Or we can try to do more for the town, which is what we've been doing up to now.
I want you to do as much of the historical preservation stuff as you can, but I think you're stepping, you're overstepping your boundaries in a lot of circumstances. And let me put my argument forward on the demolition delay bylaw, because I went through this with you as a select board member with Persons Park. As I read the demolition delay bylaw, you're supposed to work for an agreement as an alternative to demolition. I don't see anything in the demolition delay bylaw that empowers the historical commission to do remedial work or to decide what the landscaping should be afterwards. If there's something in the bylaw that says you should, please point it out to me. Because I can't find it.
To take Persons Park specifically, is we actually did work on that, and the objective there was to hopefully provide a partial demolition, to retain some aspects of what was there and not lose it entirely. That was what that was what our objective was on Persons Park. Now we can respectfully disagree on whether that was good or bad, but that was certainly the objective, and that's the objective we had with the Keys house. Same thing, is to come up with a plan that would allow us to save the building or something close to it. Preservation is not an absolute. We never save buildings in perfectly as they were. They're often repurposed, or they're adapted, or things happen. It's a best efforts kind of thing. You can't always win.
All right. Perhaps we might need to wrap this up at this point, and perhaps whether or not a subsequent conversation is warranted, we can make that determination. I can certainly understand some of Bob's points in some of the areas where you may have gone beyond the charter. I think the select board, based upon what Mass General Law has to say about all of this in terms of historical commissions, I think the select board needs to be a bit more involved in some of the activities. And if nothing else, provide a second opinion on some of the things that are going on, because there, in some of these things, especially the demolition delay bylaw, where you're determining whether something's historic or not, and imposing a 6-month delay, that there is potential financial hardship to the individual or entity that's being affected here. So I think we may need to have some further discussion about that. But I do take also a bit of exception. We don't want you to do less, but you folks should be aware of what the buildings we have in town, the age of the buildings we have in town, the historical significance or lack thereof of the buildings we have in town, and I get a sense of, the town needs to come to historical commission to give you stuff. I think you possibly need to take a bit more proactive approach in some of the stuff. And I'm not chastising or anything, making any complaints at the moment, but the buildings that we have in town, you know where they are and who they are and their age. So don't necessarily wait for us. It's a two-way street with this.
Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me,
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment, please?
Yes.
I think we had a very good learning, as far as the old fire station goes.
Yes,
And and Bob Bush can disagree, but I think we worked quite collaboratively on it, once the matter came to light, and once it was discussed by the select board. I think, a learning I took away was once we got into the nuts and bolts is what was wrong at the building. I certainly could have reached out to Bob earlier than I did. But that being said, once Bob reached out to me, and made the proposal that, another party come in, another set of eyes, take a look at the old, fire station, see if there was a possibility of perhaps a less expensive option to try to save the building in some form or fashion than, our engineer had suggested. It never hurts to have a second set of eyes. I worked with Bob, Randy worked with Bob. The individual and Bob went in, I think it was just actually this week, I think, now that I think about it.
Tuesday.
Yeah,
Tuesday.
and basically, I didn't send an email to the board yet because I was waiting, to see if there was going to be a report, written up, or an advisory email or something from the person who went in. And that's not a criticism. I just was assuming that may or may not happen. And Randy has been fighting many fires this week. But the bottom line is that the expert that Bob brought in concurred that the structure is beyond salvage, or that there was no, not without spending, I guess, a significant amount of money, and that the money, and that it would not be a good purpose to spend that money. So basically, concurred, with the findings of the original report. So I think that's a good example of us working together. And, speaking for Randy and me, we both, walked away from that, more cognizant of the fact that if one of our old buildings does get into some sort of distress that we discover, perhaps, now we've got a template to work from, to work with the historical commission. So from my perspective, I found that to be, a positive experience. And I don't want to put words in Bob's mouth, but that was my takeaway.
No, I agree completely. And in
Mr.
fact, the reason there
Chairman?
won't be a report, is that there's nothing to talk about. It's so obvious that there's no need for a separate report.
Excuse me, it's Martha Remington. I wanted to just say something about culverts. Hello?
yes, Martha, go ahead.
I wanted to point out that it's not only buildings and man-made structures that are looked after by the Massachusetts Historical Commission. Stone walls, old culverts and bridges, edifices that have been there for over 100, sometimes hundreds of years, need to be photographed before major construction goes onto those buildings. And that's why, onto those structures. So that's why at the Whitcomb Waterway on Wattaquatic Hill Road, that's why we suddenly realized that if the head of Department of Public Works thinks something is dangerous and it should be fixed, just let us know so we can at least clear away the debris and take a picture of this structure that was built perhaps hundreds of years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. All right.
Stan, I
yes.
have one more request, and it's directed toward you.
Okay.
I would like to have the select board ask the town administrator contact the Massachusetts Historical Society and see what their
Commission,
how it is that
not
they, what their
society.
process is to prevent towns from that haven't gone through the right procedure within their own towns from registering historic districts.
Oh, what potential ramifications there might be, or?
Yes.
I mean, I think that's fine.
Assuming that you meant historical commission and not historical society.
Right,
Yes, I'm
commission.
sorry. Yes.
No, that's fine. I think that's fine to ask Mr. Lowe to do that. Is there anything else that you want to have Mr. Lowe inquire about?
Yeah, I think I'll bring this up now. This is really more of a future agenda item, but I think we should investigate reviewing whether or not we really want those historical districts that have already been created to be preserved, or if the town's best interest is to delist them.
All right, well, I guess it's twofold. One is to have Don inquire as to if something was done without going through the proper order of what potential ramifications or anything are related to that. And two, have a future item, whether or not there are any ramifications to the homeowners in those districts. Is that correct?
The homeowners or the town as a whole.
Okay.
Well, wait, I got to jump in here. The process involved homeowners. All the homeowners. One of the pieces of the puzzle is all the homeowners get invited to a meeting. We have the Massachusetts Historical Commission come in and brief them so they fully understand what it means to be in a historic district. And what it means to them is it's good news. There's no bad news. The good news is that they have access to certain potentially favorable loans and such as that. There's no downside. They're not regulated in any harsher way than any place else. There literally is no downside, and we've been through it for both the Main and Pan districts. The homeowners were fully briefed, and they were fine with it. So I don't see any value in trying to unwind what's already been done, where it's not causing any harm. That I literally don't understand the logic of that.
Well, I'm not proposing we make a decision tonight.
Okay.
Just for clarity. I'm sorry, Bob.
I was further going to say that I would ask that perhaps Mr. Lowe and I go off and talk about how to make contact. What I'm concerned about is we've invested a lot of effort in the East End district. I think the benefits for the homeowners and the property owners in the East End district, if it comes to pass, and it's not certain that it will be positive, net positive, if not completely positive, because we've been through this process with two other districts. If we go to the Massachusetts Historical Commission and basically make an argument that says, effectively we did it wrong, which I don't necessarily agree with, because again, the Historical Commission is chartered by the selectmen. So you to some degree, there's a handing off of responsibility. You give us something to do and we go do it. So I guess the literal reading of the law that you pointed out to me, it isn't clear to me that authority hasn't already been delegated to the Historical Commission by the fact that the select board.
Read the rest of the chapter, and yes, because the chapter does specify how the board is created and then what its procedures should be. So go read the rest of that Massachusetts general law.
Okay, that's fine, but I just want to make it clear that the benefits of an East End historic district would be the same as those that exist for other districts, which have been thoroughly vetted and approved by the people that reside in the district. If we go back with a process question, we could very easily kill what we've invested in to try to get the East End district, and it probably will never happen. If that's the objective, that's fine. I'm okay with that. I just want you to be aware that that's a very likely result of the course of action you're proposing.
Mr. Chairman, could I have just to make sure that I'm clear on what I'm supposed to do, could I just have those two tasks repeated so we can make sure Jenny's got them down properly for the minutes?
Well, the one is to ask the Massachusetts Historical Commission what, I guess for lack of a better word, what guardrails do they have to make sure that things that are submitted to them have passed the right process at the local level. And then
Okay.
is there a process to delist historical districts?
Okay, I understood.
Is that a form of a motion to direct Mr. Lowe?
Do we need a motion?
I don't know.
It wouldn't hurt to formalize it.
Well, you can just say what I said and I'll second it for you. So I have to go through it all again.
So I just moved the two things that I detailed a moment ago.
All right, I will second that. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye,
Aye,
Roll call, Sikansky,
aye,
Waisaki.
aye.
Thank you.
And per Bob Sikansky's suggestion, I would ask that the Historical Commission read the Mass General Law regarding historical commissions, the formation and the process and procedure. And perhaps we can have a subsequent meeting, but I think from what I have read, that the select board of this town needs to be involved in discussions when some entity is going to be declared historically significant or not, and especially if it's going to be declared historically significant, and the select board, from what I can read, needs to chime in on that. And I think that's especially important regarding the demolition delay bylaw.
and I just want to add one thing to that, just for clarity. A private homeowner that wants to get something registered does not have to worry about the Board of Selectmen. We're only talking about the selectmen being involved when the Historical Commission is the agent.
Correct.
We're not interfering with anybody's private interest in getting on the National Registry of Historic Places.
Correct. Correct. So that's my motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye,
Sikansky,
Aye.
Waisaki.
aye.
Thank you.
Mr. Sikansky, anything else related to this topic, or shall we
No.
defer anything else to another
No.
day? All right,
Thank you.
thank you very much, everyone. Next up on our agenda is a review notice of intent from Mark N. Grudas and Maureen K. Grudas as trustees of the Grudas Realty Trust to sell a 2.044 acre undeveloped parcel of land, northernmost portion of map 3C parcel 3, abutting 170 Bear Hill Road, in consideration to exercise the right of first refusal. So I'm assuming that this is this in, it's just a piece of property. It's not taking it out of chapter 61A or anything along those lines.
It's actually in chapter 61B.
61B, okay. And it's a landlocked, from the map, it's landlocked.
Mhm.
Okay. Has Conservation Commission or anyone chimed in on this particular piece of property?
The Conservation Commission is aware of it and has expressed no interest in it.
Okay,
I don't know about any detailed conversations, but I've discussed it with Rebecca.
okay.
They're well aware of it.
Yeah, because it looks like this parcel is landlocked and there are other residential parcels that surround this.
Yes.
So it's not connecting with any open space or town land or. any of
Right.
that
So
stuff.
there is no town entity that has expressed any interest in it.
So is the motion to pass on the right of first refusal?
The motion that we would seek is that the select board passes on the right of first refusal, right?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we pass on the right of first refusal on this particular piece of property.
Second,
All those, I'll second that. All those in favor signify by saying aye, or I'll third. Aye.
Roll call, Sikansky,
aye.
Waisaki.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is the town administrator report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be brief. The deadline has come and gone for our departments and boards and commissions to submit their respective budgets. And I believe at this point, everyone has gotten them in. So they'll be dispersed onto onto the select board and advisory committee. The one exception, and it's not a budget, but it's a capital plan. As I know you know, we've had multiple unforeseen issues with several town buildings in the past few weeks, and Randy needed a couple of more days, and Randy is unavailable until Monday. And Randy needed a couple more days to get his capital plan into me, so I will be getting the capital plan next week. And I'll start working on that then, but we've got every budget in, obviously with the exception of the school budgets, but all of the town budgets are in.
Right. Okay.
And that-
Super.
So it is going to be, at the risk of being a one-trick pony, it's going to be a very difficult budget season, and we are looking at things that the town needs that we really can't put off another year.
Yeah. Well, that and some revenue streams that we were hoping to come online have been significantly delayed. So, we've talked about that, Don. And yes, it is going to be, again, a very difficult budget season. So stay tuned, folks. All right. Anything else, Don?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is select board business. Do we have any public service announcements?
No,
No, not for me tonight either. Any future agenda items?
I've already brought mine up.
Okay, well, we're good with that. Let's zoom in right along. Next up is the appointment of Bob Romer to the planning board as a full member.
I move to appoint Bob Romer to the unexpired term, the open unexpired term on the planning board.
I'll second that. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Roll call, Sikansky,
Aye.
Waisaki.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next up is to approve the bills and the payroll warrants, W23-10 and W23-10A. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
So I'll second that. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Roll call, Sikansky,
Aye.
Waisaki.
Aye.
Thank you.
And my understanding is we do not have any minutes tonight, so we will be passing over that. Next up is an executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Teamsters Union, Local 170, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the Board of Selectmen, and the chair so declares. And to approve any executive session minutes, if there are any, and we will not be coming out of open session. Do I have a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
And before I take roll call, I'll just say we will be coming back to regular session, but only for the purpose of adjournment. Roll call, Sikansky,
Aye.
Waisaki.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.